Welcome everyone to the Tokyo Jazz Joints podcast. This is the ice cream cone episode. It's 99. It comes with a flake.
I don't know what that is in reference to. It comes with a flake, but I was thinking...
I just couldn't resist.
Episode 99 for our more cultured listeners. For our more cultured listeners, this is the Aaron Judge. It's the Aaron Judge episode. It's an MVP episode. As we all know, Aaron Judge, the MVP, greatest baseball player alive. No arguments taken. Wow, Philip, episode 99. Look at us.
The ice cream, would the ice cream be named after him? Would it come from him?
Listen, if I have another child, I'm naming it after Aaron Judge, okay? I mean, we're talking about one of the best...
not 99 then? Be very Elon Musk to name your child 99. Okay, yeah, it's episode 99. I know, it's kind of incredible when you think what started as a kind of a lockdown experiment in March 2020, me sitting at my grandmother's drop leaf table in Dublin, and you sitting in the gritty streets of North Yokohama, and here we are, 99 episodes in, and not only that, it's not just 99 episodes, it's 99 episodes that people have actually, 98 have actually listened to, and as I said in a couple of episodes back, we're rapidly approaching the 200,000 listens.
I mean, not only listen to with much love and loyalty, but give us a lot of feedback. And shout out to good buddy and great supporter of our project, Chad, down in North Carolina, who just sent. He was listening to Philip, our episode in Osaka. About Osaka, and then he sent me a long mail. I won't read it over the air unless he tells us we can share all of that. But basically, he gave his full impressions of Bird and Top Rank at the Osaka music building, and it was really, really cool to hear his impressions as well from someone who's come over now, I think 3 or 4 times to Japan and done the Jazz Kissa tour circuit by himself. So look, our listeners are amazing. It is pretty nuts that many people have expressed love for what, when we started, admittedly, was a pretty niche thing,
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. I mean, you said it all there for change. Nothing to add. Thank you to everyone who's listened.
For a change.
Pretty eloquent. Thank you to everyone who's listened. It's more or less working out about 2,000, eventually about 2,000 listens per episode, which is I mean, it's mind blowing. Really, it's staggering, and we are very grateful for the support. Sad, perhaps, James, that we've yet to secure a sponsor. Although I'd be honest with you, I haven't aggressively sought one out, just because I feel like it comes with. It sounds like such an excuse. I feel like it comes a little bit with expectations, and then what I've never wanted to do with this podcast is kind of just create, and you hear it when you listen to some podcasts. Like there's podcasts that I've listened to, and they're about something, and then you feel like that's done, and then suddenly there's a lot of guests on, and then it's kind of like then it's stuff that the podcast was never about in the first place, and which I never really wanted to be. So, we've done it fairly regularly, but we have had breaks, much like when we started Tokyo Jazz Joints together. But I think that's the best way to do it, because the important thing is that we have places to talk about, and obviously with my trips being annual, there's no point in just knocking out episodes for the sake of it. I mean, no one really wants to hear us just chatting about ailments and beer.
There's kind of an audience for that, but I mean, look, we would be doing, we try to keep it at the same vibe like we'd be doing anyway. I would be, sponsored or not, I would be drinking a cool, clear, refreshing, slightly malty, without too much of a hoppy aftertaste, Orion draft beer.
I would be sipping a golden amber nectar of Writer's Tears whiskey, distilled in Ireland from pure Irish water, served in a tall, slender glass bottle.
Oh, you make me want to put on some Irish folk music with that description. Good Lord. Woo. Yikes.
I'm not sure the jumper would fit. Ugh. Oh, forget that, because I'm not wearing the same jumper because it's 2 weeks later. Wink, wink.
Well, we're getting off the rails here, and it's not even episode 100. Philip, it's fitting 99 because the timing has worked out perfectly, despite some back of the curtain tomfoolery with renumbering of episodes. But it worked out perfectly because we're covering basically the last. Well, it wasn't your last day in Tokyo, but it was the last day for us doing jazz of your 2025 trip.
It was, yeah. Like I said in the previous episode, I'd had a couple of days off. The trips, I'm not complaining in any shape or form, but it can be pretty intense. And this was definitely one of those. I think I was up to like 40 or up and around 40 places all in by this point. So it had been pretty intense. But this was a good day actually as well. It was we went in total to 5 places now. One of them I had been to already. One you had talked about previously, and then obviously the final 3 were kind of old favorites of ours, and all centered down in and around, well, in Yokohama or nearby. And so that was kind of how we rounded up the day. But the first place that we went to was actually the first place that I went to when I arrived. So I got to Haneda back on that first day at 7 a.m. and went to the onsen in that hotel in the airport, and then made my way to Incus in Tokyo. And Incus had, I think, moved from the place that you've been. And I'm also conscious, as I'm saying the name, we are so professional that we didn't bother to go back and check if we've already talked about Incus on a previous episode. I'm fairly sure that we referenced it, but we sort of thought, no. I had sort of suggested coming back to take some photos, and he was like, yeah, that's fine. But we ended up settling on this day, which was 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning. And so that's why I kind of went back to Incus, and that's when I really got to kind of chat to him and really properly experience it. And so if this is the second time that we've talked about Incus and you're hearing this again, just think of it like, when you go to a hotel and you switch on the TV and you just watch a repeat, like a rerun of one of your favorite shows. You're like, I've seen this episode before, but it's such a good one. So I'll just watch it
it's
again.
worthy. It's worthy because Incus version 2.0 is way, way nicer than the original space, which again, I don't think you had gotten a chance to go to.
No, I'd never been.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a walk from Ueno, sort of like around the streets behind Ueno and Okachimachi area. And my memory of it was not extremely positive. It seemed at the time that I went that it was more coffee-centric than music-centric. Maybe that was just the day I went. The music wasn't loud. I didn't recall the owner being very friendly either. He didn't really engage much and kind of very sternly said, like, well, we're closing in like 20 minutes, so you have to be quick. And I was like, okay. So I didn't really have a lot, like, memory-wise of it. But Incus 2.0, and again, maybe now because the time that I went back after you visited, and I just mentioned that, oh yeah, you just met my friend Philip. So he was very welcoming. We had a really great chat. But the new shop is small. I've got in the notes, Philip, I've got 10 seats, most of which 7 of them are just like leather seats and like a 2-seater couch facing the speakers really, really close. It's a very cramped space. And it's all black. And so it's very intense because it keeps the volume very, very loud.
Yeah, this is where I'm having sort of flashbacks because I feel like I referenced this place as being like something from like a Kubrick film or something. But it could have been just talking to somebody else.
Or no. You said that to me. Yes. But were we recording that? Wow,
no.
This is wonderful professionalism. Yes. So I think we can talk about it then. But anyway,
if you didn't hear that, if you haven't heard that episode, it's like walking to a Kubrick film. I mean, it's in a kind of officey residential building. It's a very small, like you said, it's a very small space. It's painted entirely black, and when you go in, there is on your left hand side there are, again, like just let's see, what is that? Five perfect shelves of like beautifully filed records that are kind of like have those little strip lights at the top, so they're kind of backlit. You've got these 2 huge JBL speakers which are black. All the furniture is black, big black leather sofas and single armchairs. The only white thing is the air conditioner at the top. Even the the kind of what would be the window if it was an apartment is covered with this black velvet curtain, and then you go to there's a counter with I think 3 or 4 seats where he serves the coffee, but even that is all on brand. There's like just black shelves and sort of a collection of kind of silver and gold coffee utensils and coffee pots, and he of course wears this little white jacket, like almost like a sort of a waiter's or like a doctor's jacket, and he's just very well put together. He's got very nice haircut, glasses, just a very precise man.
The coffee was very precise. I remember that. The coffee,
it's all very much done.
A lot of rules in Incus as well. We should let people know who maybe if they're sort of casual jazz kiss-goers, you don't go in there and expect to talk if you're with someone. He's going to give you a sheet that has the rules of the place. You have to order one drink. You have to order a second one after 90 minutes. No talking, no photos, no requests. It sounds really stern, but once you sit down and the music starts, because again, he's playing it loud, you realize, oh, this is a very, very special shop, and He's playing music that was really surprising to me, Philip, because I have in the notes here. I went on a Saturday afternoon, okay, and I have in the notes here. There were 3 women and 2 guys. I was the 6th, so I was sitting in the back seat, and he was playing the Art Ensemble Chicago. Then he was playing a group that I don't know if you know. They were on the ECM's Japo label. Japo stands for Jazz by Post. It's not a slur against Japanese. It's the Japo imprint from ECM. Released a bunch of albums in the 70s. He was playing a group called Om, which was an Irish-Swiss combination, playing a really kind of avant-garde fusion. I had heard of this group, but I'd never heard the album before. It was really, really good. So the kind of music that he was playing was, he wasn't playing Moaning by Art Blakey, put it that way. Okay. He was playing some aggressive music, and the customers were all sitting completely silent, just complete eyes closed, focused on the music.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember when I mentioned to you at first, you were sort of like, and you mentioned about that coffee thing, and that is, I think, obviously a big thing. And I think maybe that they'd been like, they posted a lot about the coffee or something like that, about the type of beans or whatever, but it's exactly what you described. I had that experience twice, and it's very intense because the first time, I just come off this long haul flight, had a bath in an airport, had breakfast with a friend, and then we were sitting there at like whatever time, 10 or 11 in the morning, just listening to this very experimental, very free jazz on these big speakers, and just sort of, someone scraping something across some strings and then a saxophone stab, and it's just very, very intense. And when I went back the on that Monday, he opened the door and I came in and we'd obviously already spoken, so we chatted a bit more. It turns out he speaks actually quite good English because he lived in Australia for a period of time. So you can chat away to him in English, and obviously it's named after the Incus record label, and a lot of the music, again, like you say, you're not going in there and rifling through his records, but it feels to me like a lot of what he has is from, obviously, I think he has most of that label. I think he's
yes, he does, and like our man at Root Down in Kanda. Incus is one of those places. Now, he doesn't do it for every single album he plays, but if you look at his Twitter feed, Jazz Coffee, it's at Mark Cafe Underbar Incus, you'll see he does post a lot of pictures of the albums that he's playing, and right away from like the top of the feed, you're gonna know what the vibe is there. He's playing. I wouldn't say it's all heavy. It's not like all distant free jazz, but he's definitely playing like a lot more edgy, experimental, and a lot of obscure labels. Like the Incus label itself is not one that like even a lot of jazz fans know. Started by Derek Bailey and Evan Parker, those from England. So that sort of gives you like what you would expect there. And he's also very, very active about the coffee. You're right. Like there's a lot about what beans and stuff. I don't really understand even if I translate it to English, but I'm not a coffee head. Maybe that would appeal to some people. But yeah, you can see. I think he's also on Instagram. I'm not sure. I've been off Instagram.
He is, yeah, and he does post quite regularly. And he was playing. I can't remember the number. It was like Incus. They're all numbered. It was Incus. It was quite like an early one, like the sort of first 10 albums. It was Evan Parker, Derek Bailey, and Han Benink, and it's got kind of like an anatomical drawing on the cover. But the whole thing is just like it's like something. It's genuinely like the whole place is like it's like a scene in a film. It's like you're experiencing a set in some weird way, and he's this character. It's just. Again, I think so often with some of the places that we've been, somewhere that feels to me that can only, like it could only exist in Japan, you know, like it's just the precision of everything that it's not kind of it's just very, like it's very authentic. It's not a kind of a parody, or it's not like a performance. It's just what he's into, and it's done with this kind of almost like surgical precision. And yeah, we're just sitting there sort of chatting sporadically, and then every so often he's just like, you know, we both stop and we're just listening to this record, which is just very intense. And you know, it's on this kind of gold counter that
I ended up staying for because it like we mentioned, it's in Jimbocho, which is the traditional sort of booksellers area in Tokyo. So there's this 200 used bookstores, big bookstore chains, a lot of bookstores sell foreign books as well. So it's a very busy area on the weekend. And there's also a lot of great jazz shops in Jimbocho, like we talked about, you know, some of our favorites like Big Boy and Adirondack. But you have to go out of your way to get to it, because it is on a kind of like you said, it's a little side alleyway, and it looks like it's an office building, but the entry is very hard to spot. The sign is like really tiny on the mailbox. And then you go into one of those only in Japan elevators that can hold, I think, 3 people max, 3 or 4 people. So, you know, and you go up to the 4th, 5th floor, and it comes out there. So you have to be going there. He's not gonna get people just like who find it by chance. You know, you got to be going out of your way to get there. And the fact that like when, you know, like Philip, like when I was there, like I have it in the notes here. 3 of the customers were women, and 2 of them were clearly a mother and daughter who ordered, you know, one of his sort of like coffee floats, you know? And I was thinking like, man, like that's just really, really cool that this mother and daughter are here sitting here with their coffee float, listening to the Art Ensemble of Chicago. I wanted to go and talk to them and be like, you guys are big jazz fans? Are you regulars in Incus? Like, you know, blah, 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 blah. Because that's not usually the demographic that we meet, you know?
No, I had a similar experience with the first time. There was a couple sat in front of us, and they were, I mean, I don't know, probably my age, but they just were one of those couples, like they were an older Japanese couple, but they just, you know, who felt they weren't like, they were dressed quite conservatively, but you just could tell like they obviously had like a lot of money, and it was kind of like a date vibe. So they were just there having their coffee, you know, the kind of thing, you know, sort of jeans, striped shirt tucked in, brown leather belt, you know, that kind of vibe, but like just sitting in front of these like massive speakers, listening to this music. But I'm just looking through my notes there. So this iteration of Incus only opened March 2025. So it was actually very, like, he'd only been open for a couple of months when I was there. And I remember, now I'd forgotten about this, but when I'd asked, the reason he asked me to come back to take pictures was that the amp was being fixed. So he said, oh, I'm a bit embarrassed by the amp that's here at the moment. So, you know, come back when the other amp's in. Soichi is the owner's name, and the reason I know that is not because he told me, but actually when I posted about that, our good friends in Rhinoceros in Berlin, Benedict, he was like, "Oh, Soichi-san," and it turns out they had been to the previous Incus, and they already,
of course,
they kind of knew him and met him. So then, obviously, when I came back the second time, I was able to say, "Oh, I'm actually friends with Benedict from Rhinoceros. They're coming to my wedding in August, and all this kind of stuff." And so that kind of just gave us another connection. But perhaps, James, the biggest connection of all, which I was not expecting from this man, considering his whole vibe and the place that we have just described, was he loves, and I mean loves, the program Dairy Girls. Absolute mad fan for Derry Girls. Please tell me you know Derry Girls, James.
I've heard of Derry. It's the town isn't that the town where Stephen King sets most of his stories in Maine, right? That's Derry, Maine. You know, like It and all of the, a lot of his horror, Stand By Me. It's all in Derry and Maine, right? Is that what you mean?
You are winding me up, are you?
I'm not winding you up. I've never heard of the Derry Girls. I don't know who they are.
It's not the Derry Girls. It's not the Derry Girls. Just Derry Girls.
One of these is one of those like British Spice Girls type bands or something. I honestly have no idea. No, I do not know. I'm not winding you up. I've never heard of Derry Girls. Dead silence.
So depressing. Anyway, I've got.
Is this a current program?
I'm just going to leave it there because you can just wallow in your own shame. You don't even have any shame because you don't even know what. Look, it's like even beyond shame.
For the 1,001st time.
Say that again.
For the 1,000th and first time, it is very important to remind you, Philip, that what may be popular in a tiny corner of the tiniest continent of the planet has no impact on the center of the world, which is, of course, Asia, where the majority of the people in this planet live. So whatever may be a very big pop cultural moment for you is really just something that's in the back, corner of the backyard in terms of world culture. So I do have no shame in not knowing who the Derry Girls or Derry Girls are or is or whatever it may be. But I am intrigued that Soichi-san, maybe because if he was in Australia and learned to speak English very well, would be aware of such cultural things. I'm assuming that's the connection.
Or just he has any clue about pop culture and also has Netflix. I mean, that's actually the reason. It's nothing to do with Asia. You pull this geopolitical bollocks every time. Maybe he just watches Netflix.
Netflix can kiss my Yokohama behind, and we'll leave it at that and move on to our.
No, we're not moving on yet, actually, because I've just found some more notes. I don't know why I didn't. Again, just professionalism. I've got a postscript. Day 15 returned. Great chat about jazz, Kisa culture, and so one of the reasons that he said that he'd moved to that area was like that and it was really interesting to hear an owner make this connection or verbalize this connection, because he said, wherever there's kind of bookstores, there's universities and there's record shops, and wherever there's those things, there's jazz Kisa, and he kind of saw it as this whole ecosystem. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And he said, it's important that young people understand like what an actual jazz Kisa is and what it should be and stuff. And then
interesting.
It was actually Incus 1 that he played me as well. So it was the first ever record on Incus, and I've just got wild stuff. Then he also asked me, and it just kept coming, how old was I when Bill Clinton came to Northern Ireland? During the Good Friday Agreement, which led, I think, into the Derry Girls connection.
That is very random. Bill Clinton when was with the late 90s, right? Mid 90s. So
it was again, if you knew. If you'd watched Derry Girls, you would know. But it was around the time of the Good Friday Agreement and the peace process in Northern Ireland, which is the backdrop for Derry Girls. But he also talked, as we sort of sat and listened to that Incus 1, you could tell it's interesting, right? Because someone who's like listened, obviously, this music a lot, but also the way he listened to it was like he was hearing it for the first time too, which I thought was kind of fascinating. He would just be like, just making these noises, and
he had the Zen
face. He was wondering,
yes.
Then he started to wonder. He said to me, "I wonder if the Beatles had heard this music." Which I thought was really interesting, right? But particularly the Incus stuff, right? It's like an English record label, it's like British musicians on there. It's like, I wonder, had they heard, were they listening, or had they heard this music as well, considering the kind of direction that their music took and stuff.
I mean, look, it makes sense because we know that like Paul McCartney, despite his image, he was out there hitting a lot of avant-garde stuff. And we know that John was introduced to it by Yoko. She was in the whole Fluxus movement, right? And would have known a lot of these like sort of experimental improvisation musicians. So I think that makes perfect sense. And the other thing, Philip, just to go back, like you mentioned about him moving to Jimpocho and sort of like that sort of combination of, people who go to bookstores will often also go to jazz cafes. I mean, yes, that is very true. And maybe that's not a coincidence that Jimbocho has, like I mentioned, so Incus is there now, but also Big Boy has been there. Adirondack's been there. The next place we're going to talk about, Gekkasha, which is kind of down the street, but pretty much in Jimbocho, is also there. So that sort of makes perfect sense. I mean, think about it. Think about how many times like you would have like bought a book and sat down in a cafe to like start reading it or browse through it. And in the case of you or I, that would be a jazz cafe. You know, it's just like a standard thing to do. So it makes a lot more sense than Ueno. Ueno, which is more like an old market area with the park. It's like, it's not very jazzy. It's never been that jazzy, you know?
Yeah, it was just, it's a wild place. I know a couple of people have mentioned that they went there, and I would, you know, encourage anyone if you're looking for, you know, a really kind of unique jazz experience, like Incus is where you will get it. So yeah, definitely check them out, and fairly accessible. And again, you know, if you're struggling in terms of the language and everything else, he does speak English too, and seemed quite happy to do so. So yeah, an amazing place. I look forward to going back when I'm in Tokyo next year. And as you said, I went round not too far to another place. It was really raining quite heavily that day, but I made it round to a place that you had referenced previously, and obviously we had talked about, I think in a previous episode a long time ago, a place called Kisa Sakaiki, which I think then closed. And at Fukuchi-san, the very cool and sort of bohemian avant-garde owner, who always wears a beret, certainly in my imagination at least, had moved back, I think, to his hometown, and then has returned since to Tokyo. And you talked a little bit about that on a previous episode.
Yes,
I hadn't had the chance to go, but
well, he hadn't.
What a space!
He hadn't. Yeah, but he's actually from Hokkaido. He's from Sapporo, but he had opened a place in Nagano.
Nagano, that was
in a kind of a village up in Nagano, and yeah, when he closed Kisa Sakaiki, which had been, when I lived in Yoyogi, which was very close to Yotsuya, that was a regular spot for me. And he had introduced me to so many people in the jazz kisa world and just the art world in general. Fukuchi's a great guy. And so when he closed Sakaiki, that was really sad for me. But then I moved to Yokohama, kind of like lost touch with him, and hadn't realized that the place in Nagano is still open. But he's opened this sort of like successor to Sakaiki in like the Jinpocho area called Gekkasha, which is, if you read Chinese characters, the kanji characters are really beautiful for Gekkasha. Maybe it doesn't sound that great in English, but and it's interesting, you know, Philip, because he's got the same kind of system. I noticed this when I went to talk with him. Like, Fukuchi-san is very interested in not just like the history of jazz, but art, philosophy, a lot of like avant-garde art. And at the old place, he had a back room that he would rent out to people for daytime and nighttime events. Sometimes not even about music. Sometimes it'd be like calligraphy or like a dance workshop, or somebody just rented it to rehearse. I once did like a sort of a jazz listening session there, you know? So he's got the same system going at the new place at Gekkasha, but the actual structure itself is very different. Sakaiki was much more of an old tea salon, wooden building place. This one has got that sort of gray concrete walls that go floor to ceiling. You know, so there's sort of like a loft space as well to sit in. So it's very, very different physically. But, you know, as long as he's there, it's still going to have that sort of like arty, warm vibe to it. And I was so happy that we were able to connect again. I gave him a copy of the book. He was thrilled. He put it right up on the shelf. Hopefully it was still there when you visited after I had gone.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I sort of chatted to him, and then he remembered who I was. And to me, like, I mean, again, this could be largely my imagination, but there's just something about like him. I think he like embodies for me that kind of what I imagine that spirit. Obviously I wasn't there, but that spirit of like the 60s counterculture and jazz kisa culture, and the kind of overlap to be, you know, like it's still avant-garde. They still do like weird events, and like it's a space that it's sort of non-judgmental space for all sorts of kind of things, and you just get that sense. And even going in there, like the selection of books that he has, you know, they had like I think they had an exhibition on, or the one that was opening up. There was a flyer for like an exhibition that was opening up. So, you know, it's kind of like a living space, and it's as much like an art space as it is a jazz kisa. When we went in, he wasn't playing records, and then he made this point of kind of putting one on, especially for me. But what's also striking, and I think probably embodies that kind of hybrid nature of the place, is the actual physical space itself. I mean, it's just a wild space. I mean, there's it's like one of these classic Japanese concrete buildings. So all the walls are this kind of just unrefined concrete walls, but all the furniture is like something from a stately home. So you've got these big, like brown mahogany wooden tables. You've got like a stand-up piano, and then you've just got these kind of bare concrete walls. And the kitchen is kind of all tiled. It's just such a mad combination of styles, and it just seems to fit. Like, it works really nicely. And then when you go upstairs, there's this beautiful, almost like a library reading room type place. It's all brown wooden furniture and like very warm and very dimly lit. And actually, I went up there for a peek, and there's a guy sleeping up there. He's like, "Oh, that's a friend of mine, don't worry." And then a couple of other friends came, and then he proceeded to like introduce me. I met his sister-in-law. He like proceeded to introduce me to people, and I had this really awkward moment because the guy who was upstairs sleeping and the other guy that came eventually, he introduced me. He said, "Oh, you know, this is Philip," and then he said, "Oh, so and so used to work for Jazz Hihyo." And I said, "Oh, Jazz Hihyo." I said, "Oh, that's cool." I said, "Tokyo Jazz Trance was mentioned in there," and actually the Japanese version. He said, "Oh yeah, they fired me like 5 years ago," and I was like, "Oh, okay, well." Good. Yep. Okay. Well, I'll pop back downstairs again. But yeah, it's just a really, and you'll see from the photos on the post when this episode goes out, like it's just a really fascinating kind of hybridy space. I've never really been anywhere quite like it. And I think it seems to me to be like, it comes again from the owner, specifically for Kuchi-san, because actually, Sakaiki, although it was a different interior, was that similar kind of place. I mean, I remember when you went in, you had to take your shoes off, and it really felt like it just felt like totally different to a lot of the kisa that we would ordinarily go to.
Yeah, and it was also like the way that he ran it as a kind of like not just the master, but almost like a host. Like I never had a single afternoon there where I wasn't introduced to somebody, "Oh, this is a Budo dancer, and this person does, this person paints with their feet, and oh, this guy's a jazz musician, but he recently took up the koto," and it was always just somebody really interesting, and he was always so really effusive as well. He was like, "Oh, well, this is James, like he's made it his like project to go visit every jazz place in Japan," and back in those days, I was like, "Oh, I don't know about Japan, man. I'm just trying to do Tokyo," but it was just very, it was a very much more like an inclusive place that anybody who's doing something creative could come and hang out with other like-minded people. And that's not always the case, as we've talked about with a lot of kisa, which are, understandably very focused more just on the music, and not about like schmoozing. But at Sakaiki, and I think at Gekkasha as well, you can go there and you're going to end up meeting somebody interesting for sure. And you might even be invited to like, "Well, oh, you do this? Okay, hey, let me know. I'll rent you the room. I'll give you a good rate. You could do an event here, So I was hoping, because he's got that sort of larger space, well, maybe we'll see next year, if you can come back, but, maybe we could do something there, have a talk, photo exhibition or something, because he's always been so supportive, and I would love to promote the shop some more that way.
Yeah. Well, look, that was Gekkasha. I had a lovely time, introduced to a selection of people, and then I said, "Look, I got to head off. I'm actually going to meet James," and I made my way down to you, and we didn't, I don't know if we kind of toyed with this, and we talked a lot about this, and I think certainly from what you had said, or at least what I had taken from what you had said, was I was imagining we were heading to probably one of the most legendary places, certainly one of the oldest, opened in 1933, which was Chigusa, and we don't need to go maybe into all the various iterations of Chigusa. I know you've mentioned it a couple of times, and with those exciting updates that you do about the building laws and the restrictions in Yokohama and so on, about the actual site of Chigusa, where we were expecting it to be rebuilt, but when you described it,
I take great offense at that sarcasm.
when you were describing
building code updates, which I very
building code updates,
struggled through Japanese like real estate documents and translations, and this very arcane, legalistic. Always to bring the hot info to our listeners, but in any
God, I'm going to miss them, but actually what I was sort of expecting I think I think maybe you were as well. I was kind of expecting to go almost to like an exhibition, because we knew that Chigusa, they were kind of, it had reopened in a space. So it was one of these really old, which I would imagine won't be there much longer, really grotty old kind of office buildings in Yokohama. But I was expecting like just an exhibition. But
no, that's because I made a mistake, Philip. That's because yes, the timeline, I had not been keeping up to date. Before the grotty old office building in Kannai Station that we went to, there was an exhibition in a very modern shopping center in Minato Mirai in Yokohama.
So there was an exhibition.
Yes, there was. They had a kind of like in one of those Minato Mirai. I don't know which one, Queens Center 1 or 2. There's a whole bunch of buildings like are in that area. So in there they had a sort of like what they call in Japanese like a hiroba. Like a public space, right?
Yeah.
And people, you'll sometimes have like different, like, Akita Prefecture is renting it for a month to show our local goods or whatever, So they had a thing there, and what they had up was Yoshida-san's, the old owner, the original owner of Chigusa, who did a lot of sketches, of visiting jazz musicians. They had his sketches, they had albums, they had like a video presentation playing. So it was very much sort of like, yes, exactly. An exhibition, little tiny museum space. I never actually got to that. I kept just procrastinating. And I was like, Minato Mirai, it's kind of boring mall area. I don't want to go there. Blah, 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 blah. And then I just missed it. But then they took everything and moved it to the space that you were describing, that you and I went to, which is, again, on the second floor of what is easily a building built like, to me, it looked like it was built the day after the war ended. I mean, it was old and run down, gray, windows open, like very dirty. And what was clearly like a small corner office on the second floor, that's where he's running it. Well, no, I shouldn't say he, because, Chigusa is the original version, and we've seen this a lot in Japan. Like when Yoshida died and then gave it to his sister, and she didn't want to do it anymore, and they closed, the Chigusa supporters came together. They made the Chigusa Supporters Association and reopened it, and they were running it at the one that I went to. So it was like 4 different people who were sort of managers, I guess you would say, with a whole rotating staff. So you never met the same person every time you went there.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I don't know if we went together, but when I photographed in the most recent one before it closed again, it was a younger guy who was kind of, but like you say, it was a combination of people, but I had such low expectations. I was so blown away. I mean, you can't imagine, people think of Japan as being this like really, it's so clean, it's so like futuristic and all, but like those kind of office buildings that are probably there for like 50 years, I mean, they're so grotty and like run down, right? And I just remember that, and then getting up to the second floor, like really, and then we opened the door, and what we essentially walked into was kind of like a pop-up Chigusa, right? I mean, they had the sign that used to go out in the street is along the wall. They had the original tables, the original chairs, the turntables, the speakers, most of the record collection, and it was just all there. And okay, it wasn't, it was a bit more of a put the kettle on and drink out of a plastic cup kind of drink scenario,
right?
Than a table service in nice cups and saucers. But it was just basically, and obviously, quite aggressive strip lighting as you would expect in Japanese office buildings. But beyond that, it was really like a pop-up Chigusa, and I was just blown away. And obviously, we got chatting to the guy that was running it that day, and he was kind of interested in what we were doing, and they had, I tell you what, James, they had some. I love a bit of merch. They had some cracking merch.
You were right on that. Yeah,
I got my Chigusa cup.
Did you get the coffee mug? You got the coffee mug.
I got a Chigusa mug with the original, with the kind of you'll see it in the photos, but it's this really funky little doodle that's on the Chigusa sign. It's on the cup. I also got a really nice T-shirt with the sketch of Yoshida-san.
Oh yes, he's got the hat and the glasses.
T-shirt.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yes, lovely. And it's very much it's so funny because, like you said, it's got the feel of the pop up. It's got the feel of like an exhibition. They have he gives you a little postcard that says, if you'd like to donate to help us like maintain it. He told us that they have in storage a lot of the original stuff from Chigusa because this space isn't big enough. But even though he said that, I was like, well, you still got a lot of stuff in here, man. And do you remember, Philip? Because he actually apologized to us, and Japanese service is just nuts, man. He apologized to us because he's like, oh, I'm sorry about the speakers because, these aren't like the best speakers. The real good speakers are still in stores.
That's right, yeah.
And I was just like, dude, are you serious, bro? Because like this sounds amazing. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm not an audio guy. And I was like, if these are your junior speakers that you feel compelled to apologize to me, you know what? Just give them to me. I'll take them home if they're such crap. Okay. Since you're so embarrassed by them. I mean, they sounded great. And he also, he also busted out the very famous Chigusa loose leaf notebook with the 100 pages where you go through all the albums they have and you can make requests, So it's still functioning as a place to sit and listen to the music with all of this other sort of historic / museum / business stuff on top. It's well worth the time if you're in Yokohama. I mean, I was telling people, I was like, look, I don't know, because of all that behind the scenes stuff with the real estate, that we have no idea if they're going to ever reopen again at that old place. But why not just keep it in this place? It's still really cool.
Yeah, it's nice. If they just sorted out the lighting, I think it would be better. That the menu that you reference, I'm not sure it's the exact same one, but I remember when I photographed there, they had the music menu in these big these big grey plastic binders. It was sort of like A to something and then something to Z or whatever, so split into two because there were so many records. And I photographed that. So if you have the Tokyo Jazz Joints book and you're looking through and you see that picture of Chigusa, that's what we're talking about, that menu. But I also had like a total epiphany, which I'm not going to share here because I want to keep it. I want to keep it back for something else. But I had a real epiphany because they had this old picture of the Chigusa before the Chigusa that I had photographed for Tokyo Jazz Joints book on quite large, blown up on the wall. And I remember turning around and seeing it and sort of having this complete epiphany, which led when I got home to a very exciting discovery in my brother's attic of all places. So I'm looking forward to sharing that at some point.
Wow,
I probably not be on the podcast.
Similar to the Dairy Girls, I have no idea where that story's going. So I look Dairy Girls. Look very forward to that. That sounds
look very forward to it. Your English is getting so much better since you moved to Japan. Anyway,
yeah. Well, seeing as how we're feeling very fresh, very fresh for this recording with not a lot of beverages.
Well, it's been 2 weeks since the last episode.
Yes,
so
and I'm only on I'm just on my first can of beer here. So,
anyway, look, that was Chigusa.
Yes, always great.
So that was it, really. I mean, again, a kind of very much like an added bonus because, as I said, I had low expectations. So we skipped off to Downbeat, which is always a favorite. We popped in to see the one and only Yoshihisa-san, had a drink, listened to some tunes, and then we headed to what's become, I think, the tradition to finish off my trips anyway, is that we always make an effort to try and, if not exactly the last place, more or less the last place, or the last place that we go together. And we went and spent the evening in Pithecanthropus erectus.
I think we've pretty much done it every time. You said we always try.
More or less, yeah. I think so, yeah. I think so. So, yeah, and we recorded an episode to finish off this incredible journey in May 2025 live in Pithecanthropus erectus with slightly better equipment, shall we say, than the last time. And so that will be what you'll hear in episode 100. And what a beautiful way, I think, to mark that milestone in the project and the milestone in the podcast with going back to where it all began on March 27, 2015, which is Pithecanthropus erectus. And that'll be episode 100. And once you've heard episode 100, we're going to take a break for 2 or 3 weeks till we get our ducks in a row. And we will be back with 10 more episodes, which will be our top 10 places revised and updated for 2025. And we're going to count down from 10 to what, at the moment at least, James, and we never quite know what's coming around the corner, but for the moment at least, our number one experiences on this mad journey that we've been on together for the last 10 years.
Well, like I said, I've started on my notes for the top 10 or 10 for 10 or 10 out of 10 or whatever we're calling this series. And I've narrowed it down to, let's see, 67. So I think I need to spend some more time on my list because
67?
It's quite a lot more than 10.
That's not a short list.
Yeah. Well, no, listen, as you know, I've been to 363 jazz spots all around Japan. So 67 is, what is that? That's, do your math.
Sixth.
With an S. That's 1/6. Okay. So that technically would be a short list. It's not the shortest list, but it's fairly short. But no, it needs,
I'll tell you what,
needs
it's
some
not.
pruning. It needs a lot of pruning.
10.
Needs a lot
It's
of pruning.
not 10. Anyway, the big question will be when you get those, when you get that final 10, the big question after episode 97 is, will you be able to read your damn notes? But that we will save for episodes 101 to 110. In the meantime, James, I will chat to you very briefly before we load up our live conversation and our debrief on this trip in episode 100. Take care of yourself, and I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. I'm gonna go crack a beer and I don't know. Go watch that. What was it again? Killarney Girls? Was it called again? Tell me.
Yeah,
give me,
that's the one.
Yeah, send me the
Derry Main Girls.
Gotcha.
Girls of Derry.
Gotcha.
All right.
Love you, bud. Bye.
Bye. Bye.